Hello. I hope everyone is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as I am right now. We are going to do, once Vedran gets here, we're going to go over some MMU2 maintenance protocol troubleshooting 101 goodness. He's having some issues getting consistent prints, which is something that may not be obvious how to get everything running perfect on the MMU2. So we've got the camera focused in on the printer currently right now, the MMU2, and it's really sexy little sheep. So we'll go over little bits and things to make sure it's running as smooth as it can be. Oh, I think Vedran just joined us.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
I didn't know you were gonna make a live thing out of it, but okay.
Hey, man, if I can help one person, I can help a dozen, right?
Yeah, of course.
So,
I think all the MMU users right now need a little bit of help.
yeah, it definitely isn't plug and play. So I'm going to give as many pointers that I learned because we actually had a Google Hangout with all the beta testers and the Alex, the developer, who was the main developer of the MMU2, and he went over all the it's basically like working on a car, like check these things, and if those things are all perfect, then it's just settings. So we're going to get everything perfect mechanically, and then it's down to user settings, because you're having an issue with stringing, and it looks like your red filament is stringing really badly.
Yeah.
But all the other colors look good.
You've seen the other thing, that how it was like.
Yeah, that means it's jamming before it gets to the bond tech, and then when it's or after. So it's trying to either pull it out or push it in, and since it can't, it's just grinding. So that is a thing that happens with the MMU2. And luckily, I brought my box of tips so we can go over. So if you guys don't know what a good tip looks like, let me grab my box of tips. So when everything's nice and calibrated, oh, here we go. This one should be easy to see. A good tip has a nice sharp point but no tail. What Vedran's getting is something more like this, where you're getting a little tail at the end, and this tail causes lots of issues. You'll either get jammed in the bond tech, it'll get jammed in the Ptfe tube going back in, it'll get jammed in the Finda. It'll make the filament retract too far because the Finda is still reading it. So it's going to push, and it's going to push the filament out so it doesn't suck back in. The good news is if it pushes too far out, it just means it won't suck it in the next time. So it'll pause, and that's an easy fix. That thing will fix itself. But I mean, I have a box of, I've collected every single tip from every single print. Like this also can happen. You get little hair. That little hair is also an issue. What else do I got? Yeah, here's another string. So I've collected all of them. So every time I had a failure, because we posted them all on the group, like, hey, this is happening. So here's another good tip. This is a nice sharp point. I mean, it's super sharp. It actually is very pokey. So we're going to make sure you don't get those ugly tips anymore. Now, I will say, I won't be able to see the chat because the computer's to the right of me. And to speed things up, I'm going to be really exact. I'm going to stay on target this time. We're not going to drift into Jurassic Park movies. So the first thing that I like to have everyone do when they have an MMU2 is just open up this bad boy. So these are just 2 spring screws. And inside here is the tumbler idler. And I'm still slightly sick, so if I'm sniffing, I apologize. But be very careful because these things will shoot out. And then you lose the spring, and there's not another one. So if everyone can see, there is, I have this on a turntable. I'm a smart man. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of idlers. And the first thing you have to do is make sure each one of these is perfectly aligned, because if they're off even by a little bit, it's going to put a lot of friction. And one of the things that is key to getting a good retraction is not having too many, there's not having any resistance. There's going to be a little bit of resistance, but if you add more and more resistance to your MMU2, you're not going to get a good tip, because the filament, actually, let me get a chunk of filament. There should be, yes, there's one, there's a chunk right next to me. So here's some green. And actually this one, as you can see, had that little defect where it was chomping at the filament. But one of the things I do is I'll insert a piece of filament, and you can actually test and just be like, okay, how much resistance is there? Because again, if this Ptfe tube is bent like this, you'll get more resistance. Oh, you can't see that part. I'll push this thing out of the way. So these Ptfe tubes need to be, one, straight down. If they're doing this or doing this, you're going to get a lot of resistance in the retraction. You actually can feel it. If it's a nice straight down tube, I would just make sure that these are nice and straight. The rest of them don't matter, just this area. And you can feel that it's nice and smooth. We'll go into slot 1 here, because that one actually has the idler. But you can insert through the selector and get lined up and just feel the resistance. And you'll go through each one. And that's one of my things, is make sure you get something and just test each slot. Make sure there's no extra resistance. And if there is, you can try to clean up the holes a little bit. You can make sure that each one of these is nice and aligned. And if the idler is way off, it'll start catching. You'll notice it's not rubbing on anything. That means those are nice and straight. I actually used, to line mine up, I used the 2mm 2mm Allen key. That way I can line them up perfect, and I'll just move the teeth. And this is like step 1. If one of these isn't perfectly aligned, that one channel is going to be a trouble channel. So check your red and triple check that your red channel is aligned perfectly. And also make sure there's some junk in here. So as you can see, there's junk in here. So if you have a failure, make sure to go in here and clean everything out, because that's going to mess up things in the future. The other thing to check, which is harder for me to show, is the bearings will show wear, and the bearings can slide a little bit left and right. If they're wearing towards the edge of the bearing, so let's say like my wear line, I can see it with my eyes, which probably you can't see it on camera, but the wear line is dead center on the bearing. If you have an alignment issue with this, with the tumbler, like let's say you've pushed it, because you can I get in there? This thing spins pretty freely. There's a set screws here that hold it in place. So the tumbler needs to be aligned where it's not rubbing the motor and it's not rubbing this hinge. And you can shift it left and right a little bit. And you want to shift it so each tumbler is dead center, or each idler is dead center on the bearings. Because I had one where the 4th channel was pushed off to the side, which means that it was rubbing on the bearing at an angle, which again was causing bad retractions. So you just kind of go in there, make sure that they're all nice and loose, and then make sure your idler is set centered. So you'd put a piece of filament through, unscrew this, and just keep opening and closing until it's lined up perfect. But those are all the checks you can do on the MMU2 itself inside of here. So step 1, make sure all these are aligned. Step 2, make sure it's clean in here. Step 3, definitely check to make sure that there's no additional resistance in any of these channels. And then the last one is making sure your tumbler is properly aligned, because there is a major difference between pretty good and way off. And also make sure this is super smooth. There might be catches, there might be like imperfections in the plastic. There's a very little clearance in there. So triple check that. The other last thing that you can do is when you assemble it all back together again with the screws and the springs, which this is a chore, by the way. Two whole screws hold this thing together. with some springs. One is make sure the tension's correct. It should be just flush with each side, but every spring can be slightly imperfect. So one of the things that they said to do was make sure to give it a good pull and check each side. So you're going to check the left side and you're going to check the right side. Make sure they're about even in terms of tension. And if they're off, just tighten the one side that's a little bit too tight or too loose and adjust it. But that's it on here. Those are the only things you can do on that side to make sure your MMU2 is working great. The other stuff happens in the front. So let me spin this around. Ooh, as I'm hitting my microphone. Hopefully that sounds super loud. All right. There we go. Move this out of the way. And focus. There we go. So the other annoying thing that happens is with the selector. Do I have one near me? I don't have a selector near me. They'd make it a lot easier. Let me go grab one.
Oh, I'm visible. Good thing I have my pants on.
All right. I thought I had everything, but I'm back. So this is the selector unit. It's super important. What it does is, let me grab my piece of filament. It rides on this threaded rod and two solid steel pieces. But, ooh, this is deformed. Is there a bar? No, there's no bearing in there. So this is another area to check. Make sure there's no resistance in here because, again, it's 3D printed. So just make sure there aren't any little imperfections in the hole. And you can even go in there. And this is the prototype one. They had this big channel here. And in the current version, there's no channel here. There's just like a 2mm hole. I recommend actually clearing that up a little bit, take a small bit and going in there and chamfering it a little bit. That way you have a smoother channel. And again, just test to make sure it's smooth. Because again, if that's not smooth, you're going to have issues. But the biggest thing that I've noticed is people don't align the Festo or pneumatic coupling by Festo, which is weird that they actually bought. I know there's like this discussion on the Facebook group because I keep calling them Festos, and that's because the beta test, they called them Festos. Let me attach this real quick so that way it's easier to show. So the pneumatic coupling needs to be aligned for the Ptfe tube to be aligned. And of course I have that tightened down all the way. So if you have it over tightened, there we go. One of the things that can happen is that little hole won't line up perfectly with the hole inside. So you're going to want to attach this cap and keep the screws loose. That way there's a little bit of room. And again, you can either use the use a piece of filament or you can use an Allen key, but make sure that hole is perfectly aligned because that's your other point of resistance, and it's metal in there. And if it's scraping that metal, you're going to get those little fuzzies inside of your MMU2. That's where that usually comes from. So on mine, one of the things I do is I never unscrew here to clean anything out. I'll take the Festo off because I know if this thing misaligns, it's going to be a problem. So I always unscrew this piece and I just hand tighten this. I no longer tighten it completely straight down as tight as it can be. That's silly. So when you're working on your unit and you have an issue, clear that out. Since we have that off, the other thing that causes resistance is the FINDA, which is just, by the way, excuse my very beta machine. It may not look exactly like everyone else's. Yeah, I mean, you could, I can see Dion. So Dion, if you don't know, I can't see the chat because the computer's way over there and I'm over on this little disco thing. But inside here, hey, here's another cool trick, by the way. So getting the ball out of here so you can clear it is really hard. I use 2 magnets. And I'll just place a magnet here. And the magnet will pull out the ball. And here's your little FINDA ball. So you don't have to dig it out. But one of the things you have to do is make sure that you don't have the PINDA too far in, because you can actually cause a lot of resistance inside of the MMU2 that way. So what I do is I'll insert, as I drop the filament off the table, and switch to my blue filament that's right next to me. And this one actually has a perfect tip on it, which is nice. And it's nice to use one with the tip, because if you just use this 1.75 millimeter filament, you're not going to get the correct height for the FINDA. And it's one of the issues I see when I was building it was I would stick the filament in, I'd set my FINDA height, and then when this filament tries to come through this tip, it gets snagged in here. So you want to set your FINDA height based on the tip height, because it is a little bit bigger. It should be about, you know, a little bit bigger. I don't know the exact, I haven't measured all my tips, but we will insert the filament first. We will place our ball bearing back inside our FINDA ball, and then we insert our PINDA probe, FINDA, back in, and we're going to put it flush. We're going to touch the ball. And I can feel a ton of resistance. The nice thing is if you leave this really loose and you just move it up and down, it'll get it really loose. And you just want to come back up just a touch. And you're going to keep doing this until it's loose and doesn't hit. So I'm feeling resistance right here. So if, right there's the tip. When that tip hits the FINDA, no resistance, goes through the tube, good. So there we go. This is the perfect height. And then we're going to lock this in. So that is I think the last of the selector issues. Because this unit itself is pretty easy to set up. It's just literally, oh, as my focus is off because it's focusing on the stupid filament. Making sure that those little things are done is going to help you the most, Vedran, or anyone that's with their MMU2. And those are the easiest, because again, lining up is literally just having a piece of filament, triple checking to make sure all the tooth idlers are perfectly aligned on their channels. And you can test that with filament, just making sure that there's no additional resistance, making sure the selector is assembled properly, making sure the tension in the springs are proper. And that's really hard. I mean, too tight and you're going to get grinding. Too loose, you're going to get grinding. But the grinding is always at the end of the system. So what Vedran is having is he had some grinding, and there's 2 things that cause this. So let me move this and change my camera angle. This might be a little jerky. So my setup looks completely different because I'm beta testing, well, not beta testing. Veco made me a special cap so I can use a Festo straight through. So the tube actually goes straight through into here all the way into there. So there's no little piece of material. But on a stock extruder, the Festo stops here and the filament or the Ptfe tube stops here. There's a gap, and then you have the little tiny piece of Ptfe tube we're all used to on the Mark III. Those things aren't really super important, but again, that same alignment issue needs to be taken care of. So you're going to want to make sure that when you have this in, I can't undo this like I can the one on the standard MMU2, is to make sure that the PTF or the filament goes in smooth. between the pneumatic coupling and to the Bondtech. So triple check that smoothness. Just take the Ptfe tube off and then just insert that filament back and forth. Make sure that it is aligned properly. Again, same thing we did at the top. Just leave the top cover loose, and then put the filament through. Make sure it's nice and straight to the Bondtech gear. And if there's any extra resistance, just kind of move stuff around until it's good. But you can see mine's a little bit different. Mine goes straight through, which makes it easier. But we're going to move this out of the way. The biggest issues that come with the MMU2 are on your hot end. And I don't have a stock hot end right now, but this works. I don't have bad tips. But the biggest thing is misaligned Bondtech gears. The Bondtech gears, if they're shifted, it's going to cause a ton of resistance from this channel into them. So it's almost going to be pulling them at an angle one way or the other, or forward and back is the only two ways you can be wrong. But either way, it's going to cause a lot of resistance. So the tips are going to end up having tails, and it might just be one filament. It might be more because, again, the selector is in different positions. So those different positions pull the Ptfe tube in different directions. So you're going to want to, the way that I do is I use a 2mm Allen key, which I don't know where I left it. It might be still in the selector here. Might be somewhere else. But I unscrew the locking nut on the Bondtech. I insert that solid piece of metal, the 2mm Allen key, straight through the top. And I quadruple check that the Bondtech gear is aligned. If that Bondtech gear is misaligned forward and back at all, you're going to get a lot of resistance. That's going to be your biggest issue because, again, the retractions have to be really, really good. And the retractions are off because, again, this is where all the retractions are happening. The MMU2 is not doing any of the retracting. The Bondtech gears was doing it. And you can test this, how smooth it is, again, by running a long piece of filament. And you're going to run it all the way from the tubes through the selector all the way into the Bondtech chamber. And you're going to run it. You're going to test that resistance. And if you notice a ton of resistance in this channel, again, rework some things, align things a little bit better. You're still going to feel a little bit of resistance. It's a long section of Ptfe tube it's got to go through. And even though Ptfe is really, really slick, you're going to have some resistance. So just make sure the tubes are nice and straight, make sure alignment's good, make sure MMU2 resistance is minimal. And then the last part is going in here and quadruple checking that Bondtech gear. If all of those main things are good and you're still getting wonky tips, then it's settings. And I was talking to Vedran about the settings, and Prusa is working on a guide to help you get your settings straight. But the problem is a lot of these settings are, they're theories at this point, because not all materials seem to act the same way. I sent a little message to Vedran yesterday because he showed me the tip, and I was like, well, either move this one setting up or move that same setting down. Either one of those two are supposed to fix the issue. And with that setting,
so far I haven't tried it the other way.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's really weird telling someone that either up or down is the better option, because that doesn't really help anyone. It's like, well, why can't it be one way or the other? Well, there's two thoughts to the ramming sequence. So let's grab a piece of filament, actually shove it in there, because my Bondtech gears are aligned perfectly, so it goes right into there. There's no additional resistance. But when it's doing the initial retraction, there's one initial retraction that's actually called, I think, the initial retraction in the ramming sequence settings. And it does a quick little retract, and then it is a slow up and down motion, which just basically breaks that little bit of filament. It shapes a tip, and then it does a quick removal to get the rest of the filament out. So what causes the tips is either too much pressure or not a fast enough retraction. So if there's too much pressure, what happens is there's a little bubble that will form in your nozzle, and the molten material doesn't push out of the nozzle. Instead, what it does is it shoots back up, and then when the final retraction comes, it's still attached to the end of the filament. So that's why slowing down the retraction can help. So if you're having, and you can't tell, I mean, you can't open up the nozzle and be like, is there too much pressure inside of you? So you can lower that retraction speed to 80 millimeters per second versus 100 millimeters per second, which is the stock.
Yeah, but wouldn't that, in my case, be then visible to any other filament?
That's the thing is, it on yours, it's just one color. It's just the red. And every filament is a little bit different. So depending on the dyes they add in to get it to be red, just like you said you use Devil Design PLA, the yellow has been tested by the beta team, and the yellow will not work. It just whatever's in the yellow to make it yellow makes it just impossible to print with or retract with. And the red looks like it's really close. So the red would need its own separate setting, and it's either it's building up too much pressure or it's just stringier, which is, I think, is the cause, which is why I told you to, you know, could be up. So if it's stringier, moving that retraction even faster breaks that tip. So that's the other thing. If the pressure is correct and you are pushing out the filament and there's not back pressure pushing the molten material back up into the molten material.
Mm-hmm.
Why are people calling me? My laptop takes calls and I'm like hearing ringing in my head. When that retraction is perfect and it's just not fast enough, that little bit of molten material at the end of the tip won't break. So it follows it. Kind of like when you do a retraction and you're pulling the filament out, and then all of a sudden, or you're doing unload, and like you keep getting hairs, and you're like, what is all this nasty stuff attached to my tip? And that's just because the material is stupid. But that's the other thing, is just changing settings. But make sure that all the mechanical stuff, because even it could just be that channel that the red is on is slightly more, there's more resistance in it. So when you go in and you're having that issue on, let's say, channel 3, and that's where your red is, I don't know what channel it is on.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's resistance just in that channel compared to the other ones, it's definitely that mechanical issue. And that can happen because there's, it is 3D printed. So there's going to be some tolerance issues. There could be like a stray piece of filament inside of there. There could be little things. And those are easy to find if you just take the time to, stick a piece of filament in there, run it back and forth, make sure each channel feels exactly the same.
Well, I mean, every channel that I've tested, it looked like everything was aligned, and the only pressure I felt was when it was entering the Ptfe tube. Everything
Okay.
else was fine. So when whatever I tested, it was aligned with all the gears, everything.
Okay. So then it's either, again, like I said, it could be either the setting, or that just that material does not like being on a multi-material retraction, which that's one of the things that they're working on, is trying to get more profiles. They have 90 machines running, and they have a bunch of beta testers. I still haven't messaged the guy who uses the Devil Design filament, and I'll see what he has to say. I think his name was Henrik. He had the cool accent. The only other thing to check is, because again, you said there's some resistance in the Ptfe tube. I'm not sure.
Maybe I should loosen these screws here, the whole plate that is holding the Ptfe tubes. Maybe that's also the issue. Yeah,
give that a little test.
And I don't know, I feel somewhere around the middle. I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to hold them like really straight.
Yep.
So there shouldn't be that much pressure involved. But every time when I reach, let's say, half, it really gets hard to push the filament. Like there's some kind of clog, but there's nothing there. I've checked all the tubes.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's normal or not.
There's going to be some resistance. So they have a little bit of a kink purposely made in between the Ptfe tube, so that way it doesn't slide out. There's a tiny little kink there, so there's a little bit of resistance. It's not going to be perfectly smooth, but you definitely want to test it. Always test at the MMU and at the extruder. The part afterwards doesn't really matter as much. Because again, the retraction is always here in the hot end. So there's little things you can do. And then the other thing to do is you can try moving red to a different number. So like switch red with blue or whatever, and see if the red still continues. And if you notice the red is still stringing, then it's the red. If it no longer is having issues, and then the color you just put in there is having issues, it's definitely something with the lineup, and not a mechanical issue with, the hot end. It's going to be the MMU. So those are like quick ways of you're trying to eliminate, because there's like 20 different things that can cause the same issue. But you want to try to eliminate things, so you try to eliminate the hot end by just flopping, if you're having a stringing on one filament, like just this blue is just stringing and I can't get it to work, is to, again, do the flop, flip, if blue is 2, flip it for 3, or put a new color in and see if that new color is having issues. And if that red is having issues and you don't really want to mess with it, just order a new red. I guarantee the filamentum red works.
I wanted to print my Judge red with it. That's why I picked that color.
It's a nice red. And reds are tough because normally they look stupid. I like crimson red. I'm a blood red guy. It's got to have a little bit of darkness in there. All right, let me see what the chat says.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you. Like every time when I start the machine, MMU just goes to the left, and it starts hitting the left side before it adjusts. So I don't know if that's a normal thing. It's kind of freaking me out.
So the MMU, let me plug mine in so everyone can see this. I have an extension cord and I have a power cord somewhere. I'll be right there. All right, I'm back and I'm plugged in. Let me move the camera so we can all see what Vedran's asking, which is a really good point because it makes weird noises. So I'm going to turn on the printer, which is going to make it do weird noises. So I'm going to try to explain it beforehand. So, oh, stupid tube. Let me take this thing off so it's not focusing on the tube. There we go. We don't need that tube anyway for starting it up. So there's the TMC 2130. The same drivers that are in the at Mark III are actually inside of here. So they have homing, they have crash detection, whatever. Excuse me. So what it tries to do is when it first starts up is that the tumbler is going to get set into a set position. So you're going to hear the tumbler hit and it's going to smash the tumbler, especially when it's in position 1. Because it goes through a sequence, which is moving the tumbler from 5 to 1. And if it's at 1, it's just going to go bub, 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 and you'll see the top of this thing just go. Pretty cool sounds. And the same thing here. So when you start it up, the selector is going to want to go from 5 to 1 If it's already at 1, it's going to go, bum, 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 and then it's going to home, and then it's going to come back. And the homing it uses this end stop as the home position. So let me boot this thing up so everyone can watch this. So now it's booting. It's smacked. There's a little smack, and then it's going to go all the way to that end. Home. And then it's going to stop. Now, this is the weird thing. I don't know why this firmware does this. It does this. And then it's going to redo the whole boot sequence again. So there it is tapping. And then it's going to home again. And then it's going to go all the way here. So it basically just homes it. And I don't know why on the first one, it does that weird, stupid, does it halfway, and then it does it again. I haven't messaged Alex about that. But yeah, it definitely makes a lot of noise when it starts up. It starts smacking things.
Yeah, it was freaking me out. I didn't know is that normal or not.
It is normal.
Should I stop it?
Yeah, it is normal because what it wants to do is it wants to be perfectly aligned, and so they built in stops, and it uses that same driver and uses the crash detection to just smack it, so it can't hurt itself. So what it's doing is it's hitting it, and then once the current gets a little bit too high, it cuts it off and then keeps doing it just to make sure it's shoved all the way down. Now, if this selector ever stops anywhere else, that's an issue. That means you have some alignment issues here, or the brass. There's these little brass sleeves.
Yeah.
Those could be bad or have a groove in it. But yeah, just make sure it always goes all the way to the right and then comes back all the way to the left. And because again, this is the home position, which is completely forced against this side. So channel 1 is always as far over to the left as it will go. If there's a huge gap, you've got an issue, but just make sure it does that whole sequence. Why it has to hit so many times so violently, I have no idea. You'd think it just need to hit a couple times and it'd be like, okay, we're good. Nope, it's literally like, and you're like, what in the heck is going on? But that's a good thing that it's doing that. It's aligning itself. So that way you don't have to manually align anything.
Yeah, the thing is that Mark III is working really great. It's silent, and then this thing is making noise wherever it can. It's squeaking on the side. The spools are squeaking, at least in my case, because the plastic, the vacuum, the thing, it's not made properly. So it's really annoying sometimes.
Oh yeah, and that's why I recommended everyone switching to the pneumatic coupling one that I made, and also I showed you I guess I'll show everyone on the internet. Let me grab a spool and show them.
The technique.
So what he's talking about are these things, and they can squeak because they'll move and they're going to rub against the vacuum formed spool holders. So what I do is I actually set up my rods like this. Get it in focus. And then as you see, mine are deformed. And that's because I used a hammer and hammer this in to widen it, so that way these bearings don't come off and I don't have to use those stupid plastic ends. They'll never slide off, and actually makes it quieter because they're not going to shift at all. They're not going to rub against anything. They're just going to be perfect. So get a hammer and fix your MMU2.
Yeah. Violence helps.
Violence does help. And then not having the arms helps too. The arms make a lot of squeaking noises, and they make a lot of issues. I love the arms because they did something that I didn't think you could do with a printed system. Like, I don't have the arm, so I can't show you guys what it does. I have videos I can post, but it has this weird arm mechanism that the Ptfe tube over here
Well,
connects to. Oh yeah.
if my camera allows. Wait, I have one here. By the way, I already broke one.
Yeah, they're pretty thin.
Yeah. Okay, let me just adjust the camera.
Nice printer room, by the way.
Yeah, it's also my office, and the idea was that I'm gonna have a room where I'm gonna work most of the time, and my kid is gonna play in the same room because I really love her being in the same room. But of course, she just grabs all the toys, throws them here, and just goes and plays somewhere else. So
That's fair. I do the same thing.
Yeah. I don't know if can you switch to my view or something.
You are on live.
Let's move the money.
Yeah.
So it's this thing, and filament goes right through this hole here, and the PTF tube, no, the bottom tube goes inside from this side, and this thing helps, as you guys can see, it's moving. The reason is when filament goes back, it kind of blocks this thing, and then filament just does this. So it doesn't move the whole spool. It doesn't do any kind of damage to the spool. Am I explaining that correctly, Chris?
Yes, that is exactly what it does. It basically causes a bunch of resistance, and then the spool doesn't get to unwind because the filament will make a loop between the two arms.
Sometimes if it goes back, it will just unwind the thing, and it's gonna move on the side, and
then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because then I'll try to wind that knot through, and then it gets jammed. Which is why one of the other beta testers, Clemens, you've seen him post a few times, awesome prints. He came up with the method because he wanted to mount his spools on the side of his lac, or side of his enclosure. And he basically moved the Ptfe tube and had two sections of Ptfe tube that touched together, which was genius. So I stole that idea, and I was like, there's a way to make this work with the spool holder, so that way you can still use the included spool holder. So that's why I did the two Ptfe tubes, which way better. I think everyone that's tried it is like, wow, much easier. And there's much less resistance too. There is actually added resistance pulling the filament with
just switch on something else, please.
Oh, I will.
Thanks.
All right. So yeah, having two pieces of Ptfe tube were definitely nice. So do I have a piece? I have a tiny piece. And where's my filament? Did I lose that again? Where do I keep dropping these things? Yeah, so the method that I worked on, instead of using the arms, is it's a much longer piece of Ptfe tube. But because the filament wants to go to the place of least resistance, as you can see, when I push in, the filament goes in, but when it wants to retract, it pushes the other piece away. So you get a loop here. And then when it wants to pull filament in, it pulls the other end in, and the rest of the filament goes through if it didn't have a giant kink in it. So yeah. And then retract. So yeah, it was easier. It's a lot better for everybody. Someone says I sound better. I'm glad I sound better. I still have sniffles, and it's annoying me. You know, it's been a week now. And Vedran, did you catch my cold?
Nope.
Damn it. Someone else did. I think I was talking to Joseph yesterday because he's getting ready for New York Maker Faire for his super secret announcements. I wonder if the announcement for today is posted. There's an announcement today. So everyone stay ready for announcements today.
So you already know, right?
I actually do know what's happening today. It's nothing super amazing. It's not like there's another printer launching. I think it's amazing, but everyone's gonna be like, whatever. It's just another thing to buy. There's always something else to buy.
Yeah, I don't like that about Prusa. Like since I've switched to Mark III, I want to buy a lot of stuff. Like every day I'm on his shop checking out what am I missing? Do I need this spare part? Should I buy this? It's insane. Oh yeah. By the
Yeah,
way, I don't know if you can see.
those look
This
so
was
cool.
this was the attempt from last night, and this was from today. It didn't even get to the red again.
That silly red.
Yeah. Too bad. And I picked like the worst possible model to to test out.
That's a lot of retractions. And where's, I wish I had something that had similar amount of retractions. I've done a bunch of tests. I've mostly just been testing filament. I don't have access to the European filaments, so I can't really like help anybody out. You know, I don't have Devil's Design. I had to have someone ship me some DOS filament, so I got DOS filament coming, and I hear it works great. Clemens is using DOS filament, and I know his reds and all, literally every color he's tried with DOS filament is perfect. So if you need a inexpensive, good filament in Europe land, because that's what I call everything that's over there that's not China, Europe land. That stuff works great. In here in America, it's literally Filamentum, Color Fab. Again, all the UK companies, all the European companies work great. eSun works really good. But yeah, it's literally finding that filament. And again, you're just having issues with the red. And that could be mechanical. I don't think it is mechanical, but we might as well, you know, that's why we did that long chat on, you know, just like today, flip red to something, to a different color, reprint and see if red is still the issue. If it's red, we'll just sit down and work with settings. And I'll post a video on different settings to test. From what I know, because again, the settings are the hard part for me, because when working with the beta testing and working with the guys from Prusa, there wasn't a set thing to do. Like when I asked them, like, well, what do these things in the ramming settings do? Like the little graph in the don't change these settings unless you know what you're doing. They're like, well, there's theories. And I'm like, that doesn't help me. Like that doesn't help me figure it out. And they're like, well, we're working on that. And I was like, okay, well, as long as somebody is figuring that out, and they are. I mean, they're still printing and they're still in the beta test channel posting things. So
I'm approaching to everything about 3D printing as a complete noob, because I want to test everything like any unexperienced user. You know? So whatever I'm printing, I'm mostly using the default options. So that's why I switched to Slicer Prusa Edition, because it has everything that I just
it does.
think about it. So the prints that I've tested were with his settings, like basic settings that he has for MMU. I didn't want to try anything because I was afraid that I'm gonna mess something up.
Yeah, so a lot of guys have tried like my pretty profile for MMU2. Do not, like, that's rule 1, and you did the correct thing. You use the stock settings. Guys, don't mess with the MMU2 settings when you first get your MMU2. You know, open up Slicer Prusa Edition, select MMU2, select the proper generic PLA or Prusa PLA. Or, you know, the PETG or the ABS, by the way, works perfect. For you guys that have ABS, you're in the land of, you're not going to have any issues, basically. Really? Yeah, it just doesn't string. ABS doesn't want to string, so it's magical. The downfall is it's ABS, which it's not a huge downfall, but it is a little bit. But, you know, PLA is, every brand is so different. So just mess with the generic. So start the generic. Print. If you're getting clogs, try flipping the color to see if it's the channel, just to make sure it's not resistance in your MMU2. If it's the color, then I recommend finally messing with settings, which means, you know, make a new version, and I'm going to continue to bug Prusa to get different settings. The only one that I know to change is the retraction speed, the initial retraction speed. So it's stock at 100. So look for the one that's 100 millimeters per second. unless you have it set to millimeters per minute, then I don't know what it is. Either go to 80 or go to 120 or back and forth and see if it gets better. If it gets worse, then go the other way. If it doesn't get any better the other way, then it's the filament. And I would, you know, instead of messing with it, just find a different color from a different brand. And then when Prusa finally gets better, gets a better guide to those settings, go back to it just to stop the headache. And it's the same thing, like, you know, my palette over there, I can't see it. It's not my normal setup. I have a palette and it's not, my test prints weren't perfect. It wasn't fusing properly. So all of these multi-material units are a little bit of a headache.
Yeah, honestly, when all of this started happening, I was thinking like maybe I didn't do like the right, maybe I picked the wrong thing, but I think the MMU is actually much better than the other thing. I think it's easier to control. Well, I don't know.
It is. The only thing is you have to get it working good. Once it's working good, there's nothing else you do. You just keep feeding it filament, and it'll eat filament like you've never eaten filament before. So yeah, just keep, you know, anyone that's having issues, because I haven't seen too many people posting, but there's either they're posting a couple colors are not, you know, working right, or they're getting prints. There isn't a middle. And usually that middle is
morning. I mean, it was morning in Croatia. I don't know when was it posted. Some guy posted that he finally did few normal prints, but it took him like a lot of time and
14
changes.
tries.
And then all of a sudden nothing.
Yeah.
Another print and it's failure.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what it was for me in the beta. I mean, the problem was with the beta was they were literally changing retraction settings every other day. They're like, try this. Here's a new sample. Here's a new sample. I think we printed 40 things over the course of 2 weeks, and every one of them takes 6. And that's the other thing, is it takes 6 hours minimum to print something in multicolor, especially if you want to try all 5 colors. You know, then we're talking a 10-hour print. There's not a quick way to figure it out.
The dread, and it takes like 17 hours on 0.2.
Yeah,
and it's not even 100% of the size. It's like 80 or 70 because I quickly wanted to test it. So,
did you see my tiny one I printed of yours?
No, which one?
I was messing around yesterday and I was like, I'm gonna print a tiny one. So here's a tiny Jason.
Yeah. You just showed me the thing inside the software.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Titan arrives today, so I'm gonna do the Titan mod, and I want to see if it looks better. Oh, I just dropped it. 100% infill, so that thing should be still good, even though it just hit concrete. I'm gonna take a look at the chat real quick and see if there's anything else I can answer, and then I think we'll be. Did that answer most of the things you wanted to learn about?
Yeah.
Oh, the secret menu. There's a secret menu. Let me do that. Let me get a roll of filament here. Ooh, look at that. So there's a secret menu, guys, and they don't want you messing with it. Maybe they do. I don't even know if it's in the manual. They just call it a secret menu. So there's a spool of filament. No, wind it improperly. And what's the best way to show this? Hey, I made it. First try. Press and hold. Set the length. All right. Boy, best way to show this. Best way to show this. Let me move things around. Okay. So we need to hit the reset button. There is a secret reset button. There's a little button. Let me turn this again. You can see this hole. So there's 2 holes. This is where the USB for upgrading goes. This is the reset button. We need to push that reset button. And after we push the reset button, we need to hold the center button down. So press that, let go, and then hold the center button down. And then we let it do its reboot sequence. The entire time you have to hold the center button down. So this is kind of like old school 1980s secret menu finding. And this might be in the manual. I have not read the current manual. So there it is. And then once it's done, you know you did it correctly. Yep, there it is. So I don't know if you can see this, but lights 1 and 5 are lit up. We need to go to secret option number 4. So we press left, and we're now on secret option number 4. We were on 5. And what this setting does is when I press center, I need to unscrew my Bondtech needs to come apart so I can actually do this. So if I push the center button, it does a load sequence. So now it loaded the filament. And the reason I have the door open is we're going to move the camera down here, and we're going to see if the distance is set correctly for the load. Because again, every Ptfe tube is going to be slightly different. So let me get the camera in a way that we can maybe see this. This is not an easy thing. But you can't see it in here, but the filament tip is actually just at the Bondtech gear. And this tells this will let us know if the loading sequence is correct or not. So let me So I'm going to push the center button again, and that's going to yep, that retracts the filament. I don't know if you can hear it doing that. And then we push it again to load. And we just got to, you can watch the filament load. And you can see if there's any issues, which is nice. And then we have to make sure the tip goes all the way. I can't see it in there. You guys won't be able to see it. But the tip of the filament should hit dead center on the Bondtech. The very end of the filament needs to be dead center on the filament. Excuse me. If it's not, it's either going to push too far or too little, and you can adjust that by pushing left and right. So it'll actually move up if you push right and down if you push left. And you'll set the height. You'll retract it, and you can keep testing and keep seeing if the distance is correct for the amount of filament that's pushed in. Because if you push in too much filament, you're going to grind, because it's going to hit the Bondtech, and then all of a sudden the idler is going to continue spinning, and when it hits the Bondtech, the Bondtech isn't rotating just yet, so it's just going to snag. It's going to push. It's going to cause little defects in your filament, and like from right now, I can see that that's too much. So there we go. That's the proper height. But yeah, this is the secret menu, and then to save that setting, you retract it, and once it's fully retracted and the lights go back to being the lights 1 and 4, you push reset, and that will save the setting. So that's your secret menu.
Cool.
If you're having issues with loading and unloading, most people don't. The tube is a set length. There shouldn't be an issue, but you can always check that, because you are getting grinding. I think it's from clogging. I don't think it's from the length, but you can check. You can at least check. Well, that's your secret menu item, number 1. And I wouldn't mess with that. I advise you not to. But if you're having issues with load and unload, you can at least check and see. You can go to that secret menu. You can push the center button. You can see if it's loading to the Bondtech gear or going way too far or being way too short. So that's another little thing you can test.
Well, unfortunately, in both cases, when the printer stopped, it passed like 1 or 2 layers already, and then he just stopped, gave me the message that there's something wrong with MMU.
Yep.
So every time I tried it to continue with print, either it wouldn't load the filament inside, and also at the same time, since it's past like 2 layers, it wouldn't continue printing properly at all. So I don't know if there's something that can fix that. It basically slows down, when it's over the wipe tower.
Okay.
And it stays there for a while. Then after that, I guess after like minute, he just moves to the home position.
Yeah. Okay. So what Vedran is mentioning is when there is when the MMU2 realizes there's an issue, it stalls. It waits for the user to do something, and then you have to do something. I can mimic this. No, I can't really. I'm not in the middle of a print, and that's going to take a while. But so a lot of people will have a stall, and what will happen is the extruder will sit over the wipe tower. The MMU2 will continue to try to figure out what's going on. Once it times out, which is usually about 60 seconds or 120, it's either 1 minute or 2 minutes. Then the extruder will go to the home position at 1-1, and it'll wait for you to do something. And this is where you have to do something. So if you have to do something, so my number one thing is to check the Ptfe tube. Now, on mine, I'm using a Capricorn. I'm only doing that because the ID is the same as the orange Ptfe tube. I would have just done a standard clear Ptfe tube so I can actually see the tips and I can see the retractions and everything. But they have different IDs. So what I did was I can see if it's stuck here. And my first step is always to unscrew this. Unscrew this pneumatic coupling and see if filament is still in here. If there's still filament in here, you're going to have to undo the... ooh, look at that. I can cheat and bring this closer into the camera view. I've got technology. Okay. There we go. So I can, I would then remove this. And if it's stuck in the Bondtech, unscrew the Bondtech, pull the filament out, reset the Bondtech. And then you're going to want to pull all that filament out and cut it because it might have that grind mark. You need to cut off the grind mark. So that's step one. And that's why you saw that length that I had the grind mark is when you do have a jam and it's ground, the next time that tries to go through, it's gonna skip because it can't spin that filament through because it'll hit that grind mark and then it stops. And then the filament thinks it's loaded. It thinks it's in the printer, but it's not. So if you do have a jam and the jam is in the Bondtech or just above or somewhere up here in the Ptfe tube, remove the top, unscrew the Bondtech door, remove the top, remove the filament, and then, you know, pull all of that filament out. I mean, literally pull out a whole length, find the little groove where it's dug into the filament and snip from there. Pull the filament back through up to about this festo, this pneumatic coupling. Just put everything back together again and make sure to clear out any dust or anything that might be caught here. And then you're going to push the center button. The center button is going to run a check, and the center button is going to retract filament and wait until it, you know, goes past the fin to ball. Then it knows, okay, yeah, okay, we're back in order. It'll reset the filament, and then it'll go on. So you need to do something. So that when it gives you a warning, that means you, the user, the operator, have to come in and fix me. I can't do anything until you fix me. And that's the worst case scenario is it gets stuck here. This means something that's usually the worst jam of them all because it means it probably missed a layer because it probably jammed before going back into the hot end and it never loaded. Or it loaded and it couldn't unload, which I get that sometimes still. But then if it's not in here and it's more like, let's say it just caught here or there's a little hair, again, undoing this will be the first step. Clean out any hairs, any little bit of nonsense, and it'll drop the fin to ball back down. Clean it out. Don't remove this. Don't ever remove, once you get this thing aligned, just remove this. And I just stick that there. It's like the little hidey hole for these pneumatic couplings is in there. Clear out the fin to ball. Attach everything back. You don't even have to attach it. You can leave it off. You can hit the center button, and the center button will do the retract and clean check. And if it passes, MMU will say, okay, I'm good. And then you'll push the right button to continue, and it'll heat everything back up and it'll go again. So it doesn't mean a complete fail. It can recover from a failure. You just have to fix it, clean it, and then check it with the center button, and then press the right button to continue printing. And then you can watch.
in my case also, like by the time I got home and tried to remove everything, uh, it dropped the temperature. I don't know why. It was like
It has to. It's just a safety feature. The nozzle will drop the temperature completely to the nozzle will go to cold, but the heat bed will stay hot.
yeah, but I couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't move it up. I'm using Octoprint, and it wasn't responding. And at the same time, when I tried to do it through the menu, there were like options for just info and I don't know what.
Yep. So yeah, that's the only problem when you use Octoprint is the Octoprint will take over the menu, so you can't do tuning, you can't do any of the weird stuff. But again, I know it's cold, and if it's stuck here in the hot end, you just have to unscrew the Bondtech to pull it out. That's why I always tell people if the jam is here in the extruder, remove this door, unscrew the Bondtech gear, and pull that filament out of there, because you'll never be, and you don't have to move it up. You can do it from where it's at. The motor, I need to talk to Alex and see if they can fix the firmware. The Bondtech gear doesn't, the motor still has current running in it when it's off. So it's really hard to yank the filament out. It'd be nice if the extruder would shut off and that way you can pull it out easier. But that's why you have to undo the door. Once you remove the door, there's no more tension, so you can just pull that filament out. You don't have to worry about the motor current. I'll talk to them about that. That should actually makes more sense to me. I don't know why the current is still on. There's no need to have the extruder holding anything.
When I tried to pull it because there was stringing inside, it moved the small PTF tube inside. So
yeah,
I had to remove everything and adjust it.
Yep.
Annoying.
Yeah, yes, it is. That small Ptfe tube makes me angry, and that's why Veco made this special top for me. And I guess I could make one for the original and see if it helps anybody. I'm still testing it, and it's working. But what it does is I'm using a pass-through pneumatic coupling. So it's all one piece. So this is just continuation. Oh, hold on. There we go. So it's just a continuation from here to here. There's no little piece to screw you over. And it's working. I mean, this is working just as good as the standard hot end. But I don't want to recommend anything, and then all of a sudden everyone gets a worse print. But I can definitely remix the stock one, so it uses a pass-through, which definitely would remove the issue with a tiny Ptfe tube. And the tiny Ptfe tube is an issue. It causes extra resistance if it's misaligned or damaged. So, and it is a tiny piece, and it's really hard to make a replacement one.
I really love the manuals from tools. Everything is explained, except in this case, because you're not prepared for anything. Like I said, that noise first freaked me out. Then I had a situation where I didn't know that the filament is still inside the tube, and I don't know what happened. So I had to restart the machine, and it tried to move to the position, and actually it was just pulling out the filament, and it got stuck inside the selector. So,
and it's not supposed to do that. That was one of the things that we complained a lot about during beta testing was if this Finda is detecting filament, this should never be able to move. It should tell this thing never ever move. It should give you a warning like, hey, there's something in here. And on a restart, it doesn't think that way. Because again, I don't think the sequence goes, hey, check this. It just goes, do your sequence. In a normal situation, this thing will not move. I mean, there's no way to move it if there's filament in here. You can't push the buttons. You can't force it. The motor is actually really strong. They put a lot of current in this tiny stepper. So, but that is a downfall, is when you hit reset and you don't check. And that's one thing I don't like about the orange Ptfe tube. As much as it's a really pretty addition, I think it's better to have something clear so you can see it. But then, I mean, I guess just always take this thing off and check to make sure there's nothing still in there. Because that was one of the things we experienced a lot during beta testing was broken filament. Because before you guys had the menu screen, it wouldn't tell you anything. It would just be flashing lights up here. And we complained a lot. We're like, can the printer tell me that there's something wrong? Can the printer tell me exactly what's going wrong? Like, can it tell me that it's stuck here, stuck there? Because it can figure that out. I mean, it's not that hard to figure that out. But one of them was definitely, please never let this thing move. Because it would, you know, we'd push the check button and it'd be fine, but it wasn't fine. And then all of a sudden it'd move and then it would break the tip in there. And then it's just jammed. And then you have to take the whole thing apart and fix it, which sucks.
Yeah, I was lucky in one case where I could just move the selector all the way to the right because they have like a hole at the end. So from that point, it's much easier to remove the filament. But
yep,
without that, I would have to remove everything. Who knows how many times?
All of the times.
And I have it like for 3-4 days now. It's
I think. I'm going to open up I'm not really good at the GitHub thing, but maybe we need to post some GitHub comments like, hey, here's how we should fix some things. I'll do the same thing on my end. I'll post to Alex and just chat with him about other firmware stuff because, again, we're still learning. I think that's the biggest thing that with any launch, with any product, is there's still a learning phase. And we're learning what people are doing right and what they're doing wrong. And we're also learning what the MMU does right and what the MMU2 does wrong. So what it does wrong is definitely on a reset. It tries to move this if there's filament still in here. And to mention, 3D Gusner just asked if I use Capricorn in the hot end. Do not. Please use the included tubing that comes with your MMU2. Do not put Capricorn in there. Don't put some other Ptfe tube. It has a very specific diameter. It's 1.85 millimeter ID internal diameter. And it just centers the filament perfectly in the center of the hot end, more so than Capricorn at 1.9, and definitely better than the standard Ptfe tube at 2.0. They're very centered. They're using a very high-end Ptfe tube that's very, very centered. And the other thing is, what we know that you don't know is that it actually breaks in. So it's 1.85 when it goes in there. Then after a few retractions, it stretches a little bit, which firms up the Ptfe tube, makes it much harder because you could try to find reinforced Ptfe, which is a lot firmer, but that helps out a lot. The retractions, if you're using anything besides the included Ptfe, you're going to have an issue. I've tried Capricorn. I've tried the dark blue, the XS or whatever. This is the TL. I've tried that. I've tried titanium heat breaks. I've tried micro Swiss heat break. I mean, I've tried all those things. I mean, that's, I think, one of the reasons they wanted me on the beta test team, because they know that I would just be like, I'm going to do my Chris stuff. I'm just gonna keep messing with things. And every time I mess with it, it got worse. So please guys, don't drift off the path of what Prusa's set up here for this. It works. The print quality is fantastic. The copper block works. I mean, I know that works. I know different nozzles work. It works fine with a micro Swiss nozzle. It works fine with a E3D copper nozzle. It works fine with, I mean, those things don't really affect it. Don't change the heat break. Don't change the Ptfe tube. I can recommend the Zerabo hot end, the extruder assembly, because it does work. I haven't had any issues because of this. So it works. You're welcome all to test it. It's not, it just takes 12 hours to print anything. So my litmus is very tiny. My testing is very tiny for it. Yeah, you can link Neuro. You can link the GitHub issue. Someone's asking about posting a GitHub issue. Anything else, Vedran?
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna first I'm gonna try to print again because I've made few adjustments. I'm gonna see if it's gonna do anything better with this dread thing. If not, I'm gonna take it slow. I was just modeling something that I'm
What?
yeah. Uh, I'm just gonna test two colors to see if that works. Then I'm gonna move slowly to more colors and see what's the actual problem. Whatever you said, this will definitely help me out. And
Yeah, rewatch the video. I mean, go slow. I mean, number one is just if it does it again, swap the color. See if it's just the red. I mean, just whatever slot red is on, move it to a different slot.
yeah, well, I'm gonna do that first now.
Yeah. So I mean, that would be that's the easiest way. That 100% will tell you it's the filament or not. If the issue moves with red, it's the red. If the issue is in, let's say the new color you put there and the issue is there, then it's that spot. Then it's easy to figure it out. It's easy to go back like, okay, then it has to be the selector, has to be the MMU2, has to be that spot. You know, check the holes, make sure they're aligned good, make sure the Ptfe, the little itty bitty orange Ptfe tube in there isn't damaged. You know, just it's an elimination process, and it's not one that they don't have a troubleshooting manual comprehensive enough. And that's why I called this thing when I told people that the build process was harder. It is the build process is more particular. You as the user are more the problem than the MMU2, but the MMU2 is 90% with you. Because I mean I built it. I mean I built them 4 times, and every time I still had to adjust things afterwards. I was like, okay, this isn't right, even though I thought 100% I didn't mess anything up in the initial build process. I messed something up. Take the 4 hours to build it, everybody. I've got it down to an hour and a half.
Nice.
And I've posted the videos. I mean, every time I built one of these, I posted the video to Prusa. I was like, this is my build video, like every step, following along step by step. And I'm like, I'm going to cut a corner here because this is wrong. and then I was the one who was wrong. So yeah, don't cut corners. And
I was actually taking easy with MK3 when I was assembling. I took 2 slow days to prepare everything, and I've seen people like doing that thing in 4 or 5 hours, which is insane.
It is.
I can't just think about those steps in, in that amount of time. And also, like I decided to make the same approach. So with MMU, I was extra special. I went through everything. I didn't even eat Haribo because I wanted to be like concentrate on everything, and still like only problem. It's hard because you really can't find any answers. Like
no, and hopefully this helps a lot of guys, because I've been meaning to do an MMU2 troubleshooting like 101 video, and this was all just randomly put together. We had chatted yesterday about, you were having issues, and I was like, dude, let's just go on video. Let's listen to what you have. Let's point out all the fixes, because I have these videos from the Prusa headquarters, because we had Alex, the guy who made the machine, and he went over it step by step, like check this. And I probably missed some things, but those are the basic ones. Those are the ones that you don't think could be the issue, but they tend to be. So just take it slow. Hopefully this guide gets people there, and hopefully I know Prusa is still continuing to make a troubleshooting guide, but they don't know what you guys are doing wrong or what they've done wrong. So they need to figure that out. And in the meantime, they've got me and the rest of the beta testers when we pop out of the cocoons. I know Clemens is trying to help people on the forums, and because there's only like 10 of us, and Shane would love to be helping right now, but he's getting ready for New York Maker Faire, so he's been printing. His MMU2 has been printing nonstop for, I think he made like 400 gifts, like little printed gifts to go to every single person that comes to their booth at New York Maker Faire. Joseph is sick, so he's not able to help many people right now.
Did you say last time that Shane was getting engaged?
Well, so he was going to ask and he didn't. So hopefully his lady, he was going to ask the parents if it was okay. You know, he was going to do it the old-fashioned way, and he didn't do that. He's going to do that in a couple weeks. So shh. But yeah, he's a busy man, and he won't. So luckily, his girlfriend isn't going to watch this. But hopefully she didn't watch the last one. So, and Shane hasn't watched the last one either because he never asked me about it. I never mentioned that I said that. But shh, don't talk to Shane. But yeah, we'll see him again after New York Maker Faire. I know his butt's gonna be kicked, man. I think he just left for New York today, and I think Joseph is probably on his way too because they have big announcements to make. So, yeah, I'm ready for them. Yeah, ask the question, Neuro. I can finally see my screen since I'm not pointing at things, even though it's in the wrong direction. Screen's over there. Oh.
Dude, you're sick like almost a week and a half now, right?
Oh, dude, it's bad. You know, being a wedding photographer is great, but you know, yelling at people, chasing people, it'll be 80 degrees and you're running around. Then at night it was like 65. So it not the healthiest of environments. Plus there's kids. Kids just carry disease. They're beautiful and amazing, but holy cow, they get sick and they make you sick. And yeah,
me as a photographer, I never wanted to take weddings as a job. So I really hated that. I did only 2 weddings, and one was because my friend told me that they really want me because they've seen the style I had. Then in the middle of the wedding, I just found out that they never heard of me. And then the other one was like, can you just bring a camera? Yes, we will have a wedding photographer, but we would like you to be there. And then when I showed up, there was no photographer except me, so I had to take pictures.
I'm glad no one's ever done that to me. That's brutal, man. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to take a few. Well, I'm taking all of them? I've never done this before.
One thing they haven't thought correctly, and that was that I didn't plan to bring any lenses. I just took, I think I had that crazy 18mm lens. I don't know what was it. So everything was so deformed, distorted. It was great.
I hope they enjoyed their trick wedding on you. So we got a question here. Let me see here. Let me read it again. Okay, so he's having an issue where it's detecting the filament, but the filament doesn't reach the extruder. So that's a couple of things. And that goes back to making sure that there's no resistance. Because what can happen is, one, if your doors, if the 2 screws in the top of the door aren't tight enough, it can skip. So make sure, one, that the doors are down properly, that one side isn't jammed. Make sure that when you lift up on it, the spring has tension. It's not just like stuck in a spot. Also make sure that the Ptfe tube isn't damaged. That leads to here. But what most likely happens, I've had a couple things. One is the tube isn't fully inserted into the pneumatic coupling. So it hits the inside of the coupling and it gets jammed here, and then it can't go past the tumbler, and then you get stuck here. Or it goes past that and it gets stuck at the mini Ptfe tube, so make sure that isn't damaged and make sure it's in there. One time I put it together and I forgot to put the tiny Ptfe tube in there, and it just kept jamming. Well, it kept smacking into the filament sensor. So please make sure that tiny piece of Ptfe tube is in there. And then the other was that secret menu. So if you didn't see the secret menu part, you can triple check using the secret menu, which again is just hitting the reset button. There's a little hole here. Hit the reset button, hold the center button down, wait for it to fully boot up. You're properly there when lights 1 and 5 are lit up. Push the left button to go to 4. And once at 4, hit the center button and it'll shoot filament in and have the door open. Make sure the filament is not like smacking anything. And it's a nice way of testing to make sure your filament path is smooth. Make sure it's not catching. You can listen. I mean, just listen to make sure it's not like going click, 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 click. It's not making weird noises as it's hitting things. If it's hitting things, there's an alignment issue. And those are easy enough to fix. Just, wherever the noise is, triple check that they're good. But then make sure it goes to the Bondtech gear. Please make sure that it reaches the gear. So if you've replaced this tube at all or done any modifications, that menu is your savior, because that will help you make sure it reaches all the way to the Bondtech gear. You don't want it going too far, because if it goes too far in, it's grinding. So then when it catches that grind spot, it can't insert the filament all the way, but it'll pass the FINDA, and it tells the printer that, hey, look at that. Because the filament sensor is disabled. I know a lot of people like, Chris, why isn't the laser sensor working? It's not 100% reliable. So the little ball in here with the PINDA probe is 99.9% reliable. It's going to read that there's filament in there. This laser sensor is not 100% reliable, and then give you false positives. So more false positives aren't better. And I know they've just released a new update to it, and it's hit or miss still, but just make sure when you're watching this thing go, like even when you're watching a print, make sure when it hits this, it's not like hitting it and going grrr, which means it's grinding up here. Make sure it just hits and you hear a little grind, like it should just like catch into the Bondtech gears, and then the Bondtech will then take over and wind the filament in.
So Prusament, huh?
Oh, they just posted it?
Yeah, he just posted it.
Oh man, so yeah, I can finally talk about it. So yeah, the Prusament filament is launching today, and it launched. Yeah, it's really nice. I've been testing it for a while. I have like 9 or 12 spools of the red, the silver, and the black, and I posted some pictures of the black and the silver. I haven't posted much of the red. I've used it in multi-material prints. It was the tongue in my chameleon and a couple other things, but it is super nice filament. It is really, really, really nice filament. It's they're making it all in-house. You'll eventually see all of the printers shipping with their own silver. Filament Frenzy's like, talk away. Yeah, and I don't know the color launch, so I don't know what colors they have. I don't know what colors they have in the works. Let me load it up. Let me see if they've...
This Galaxy Black looks really nice.
The Galaxy Black is super sexy. Let me... yeah, so this is the Galaxy Black. It is really nice filament. So it's basically Filamentum Filamentum Galaxy, but instead of the gold, they use silver flecks in it. So silver. Let me get that. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see the silver glitter in there. The silver filament is just, it's literally a knockoff of Rapunzel silver from Filamentum, but the prices are amazing. I think it's $25 for a kilogram. I mean, a whole kilogram for $25. The price for Filamentum is, I think in America, minimum is $28 for 750 grams. The really good stuff, like the Vertigo Gray, is like $30 something, $38, $34 for Vertigo Gray and Galaxy. So yeah, it is. Yeah, it's insane that the prices are so cheap, but you get really good film. And they have their own cool spool. I don't know if they post the pictures of the spool it goes on. It's like a honeycomb spool.
Well, it's hard to see. Yeah. I can see it a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a honeycomb spool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Let's see here.
Now I need to order that stuff.
Yeah, and you're in the country where you can order it for good prices. So I still have to pay crazy shipping.
Thank you, Joseph, again.
Yeah, dude, the guy is trying to make a whole world of Prusa. So it's kind of nice. And the filament print's great. I think I've posted a bunch of things with it, and it's just, let me grab something. I've got some bigger stuff and some things. So if anyone wants to see it.
Is that a Groot in the background?
Yeah, I don't have any silver samples, but it is really nice filament. And this was printed on the Mark III. This is just this is the black. This is the bear I printed. It is, yeah, 0.2 millimeter layer height. I mean, it is.
Wow,
yeah, it prints awesome. Yeah, the silver has silver glitter, so it's silver with silver glitter, and it just look at Filamentum Rapunzel, same exact filament. Yeah, that's Tom, Filament Frenzies on here said that spool looks. The spool is ridiculously pretty. It's not a spool that you've ever seen before. It has a honeycomb pattern. It's really nice. They definitely are. I mean, again, the price is ridiculous. I mean, $25 US. Crazy spool. That's not a spool you've ever seen before. The packaging is really nice. I know it's going to be packed well. So, I think I got to pull up the link because I got to see what they posted because I have other stuff they talked about to me. But
yeah, I hoped you're gonna sleep and say more than we know, but okay.
I'm trying to find the post. I'll go to Twitter. I know it's got to be there.
He posted on Facebook on a community.
Oh, well, son of a gun! I'll go there. Was it Joe that posted it?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. All right, let's see what he posted and see if I can talk about anything. Yeah, that spool is insane. I've only seen little like cell phone photos. Mechanical properties. Yeah, there it is. So it's got you got your own custom website where you can check the consistency of the filament. So I was able to test that. He sent me the link one day, and he's like, "Hey, plug in your reference number on your spool, and every spool have a little reference number, and you can plug that in, and it'll tell you exactly what the diameter of your filament was over the full length, and you know how much was spooled onto your individual spool. Yeah, it's insane. So, all right, Tom, you have a good one, dude. Yeah, I've tested the red, and the red is super red. I have it. Wait, hold on.
And it's not stringing like mine.
There's nothing Chris doesn't have in the basement if he looks far enough. Yeah. That's the red. It's so red. And the windings on the spool are perfect. I mean, the whole spool is wound perfectly. So, yeah. So look forward to buying more filament, guys.
That's what I love about this spool that we got with MK3. Everything is so aligned. Like if you check my spools that I bought like 2 days ago, they're a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited to have spools that aren't crooked and weird and make noises when you try to print with them because the filament's overlapping here or there. I need more tables. So, all right. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm glad that the filament announced so I can talk about that. I know people are going to ask me about it. But yeah, I mean, $25. Did they put the prices on there? I don't even know. All I know is it's like 25, 27 bucks for a kilogram of filament. It might be more. Maybe the price changed.
25 euros, but okay.
Well, only 25 euros. Yeah, it's nice stuff. It prints, you know, and I can't wait what else they come up with. So looks like they have a video to go with it, which always has a catchy guitar music to go with it. So I'll have to listen to that when I come off the live. Oh, dude, being in a future UFO box would be sweet. Yeah, it's not cheap, but it's less expensive than filamentum. So that is going to be its biggest impact, is that it's a clone, and I mean, there's variances to it, but I mean the quality is the same. So, and at that price, I mean, it's expensive over here in America to get filament one, our filamentum filament. I mean, it's, again, some of them are $38 for 750 grams. I'm just tired of 750 gram spools. I love kilogram spools because they print forever. They just continue to print and they never stop. So, Vedran, I hope we helped you. Hopefully this video helps people too, but
you will be the first one to find out. Actually, the second one, I will be the first one.
Yes, you will be. And maybe your family, because you'll be like yelling, like, not again. But you're saying it in like you see it in your home language, so it won't sound like that.
Well, honestly, I even think in English now, since I'm working most of it with foreigners. I don't even speak my language. I come home and I just continue speaking English, and then my wife thinks that's funny thing, that's a joke, so she continues, and then night comes in and she's like, dude, speak our language. Like, okay.
I get that from my mom because I'm first generation American. So my mom will be like, why don't you speak Polish anymore? I'm like, fine. And I'll do it as more of a joke. So like the whole day I'll start speaking in Polish, which it's completely like, I don't know sentence structure. So my sentence structure is speaking in English, but using Polish words. So like, she's like, no, that's not how you say that. I'm like, well, you asked me to do it. Don't criticize when I try.
Well, I can tell you that we in Croatia, we don't understand anyone. Actually, I can understand Russians when they're speaking. I can understand a bunch of Balkan countries.
Yeah.
But all of those countries, they understand our language much more than we understand every other language. It's really weird. Like before we were in Yugoslavia, and we had Slovenia, and no one knew that language. But if you speak to any Slovenian guy, he'll talk to you in Croatian without any kind of problems. It's a bad thing.
It's almost like when I hang out with someone from Texas and I can't understand them, but everyone in Texas can understand people from like Alabama. And no, I'm just kidding. Someone just asked what they missed. You just missed how to get your MMU2 tuned. And you missed that they announced that Prusament launched, and looks like someone just said, 3D Gusner said it's going to be sold on Amazon, so you can get it easily without having to pay crazy shipping. And that is ridiculous. So Amazon will apparently be getting my orders again for certain things, even though I will still continue to purchase as much USA made filament as possible, like 3DX Tech, which is on my sticker here. So, and I just finished those really gorgeous. Let me grab it. I finally finished calibrating that. Focus. Yeah, I finally finished calibrating that 3DX Tech carbon fiber filament, and it is very pretty. I mean, that is.
Yeah, it looks great.
That top layer is insane. It doesn't look like a normal. It doesn't have any real imperfections that you can see. So, yeah, it is a really nice filament. So, support your USA brands because they make things like this, and it is so light. Every one of these is 4 grams lighter. So I'm running it at 20% infill. I normally run 15% infill, and it's still 4 grams lighter than the standard PETG. So carbon fiber for the win if you want slightly lighter, more rigid prints. And so let's do a break test. So these are the weak points. We'll do it live. I don't care if I break this. So here's the weak point. We'll do a couple weak point tests. The first one, I'll try to get a rod inserted. This is just for fun, folks. So let's get a rod in there. Ooh, it's going to be tight. There we go. And a mallet. By the way, this is how you insert your rods. A little bit of grease, a little bit of mallet. There we go. And we'll do the brake test. This is where it happens most often, is this. So let's see. Oh, that broke nice. That actually took a lot more force than I thought. And the other place it breaks is in here. And it oh, I love breaking these things. Stuff breaks nice though. And it didn't break on one layer. It broke on multiple layers. That's good. So yeah, this stuff is more than durable enough. So yeah, definitely strong. And then over here I've got PETG. Where's my regular PETG one? Hold on. So here's Prusa. There we go. Oh, but that was a little bit easier. Oh man, just breaking stuff online for fun. Yeah, that doesn't even do anything. Just yeah, it just breaks. Yeah, so I mean it is stronger. So not a ton, but it is stronger. That Prusa stuff broke pretty easily. All right. Well, I'm out. Vedran, let me know how that goes. Post your finished dread, because I know that's going to finish. I'm going to wait for my giant Groot to finish here, and then I'm going to go back to printing lithophanes. And more carbon fiber stuff. So, because I have to reprint this part that I just broke. I'm reprinting it, and I printed the wrong one anyway. I forgot to print the one that has the set screws for the rods. So, but this thing is so light. So light. All right. Everyone have fun. Vedran, thank you. You enjoy the rest of your day and stay out of trouble, man.
See ya.
Good night, everybody. Or good night, everyone in Europe.